the boom in crypto is so fast, innovation is so fast, but the security ratio to the innovation ratio is like 100 to 1. The proliferation of the internet in just like the last 25 years and the amount of identity proliferation that each individual has is just unsustainable. Crypto users are increasingly targeted, and software is easier point of entry than hardware level attacks. Compare the amount of attacks your cold wallets have versus your software wallets at, and I bet you like it's 100-fold, 300-fold. I think the convenience is important. You definitely don't want to be discouraged to like be on the chain. So you want convenience, but you also want privacy, right? And you want less risk.
Everyone who's in here, welcome to the first Beluga live stream. This is our first X Spaces. Today we are interviewing the man, the myth, the legend, Ali Khan. He famously once said that he could hack anyone's hardware wallet with $50,000 and 6 months of preparation. So he's been working in financial cybersecurity for the last 20 years and is going to teach us how to keep our crypto safe. And then we're with Will, the crypto degen legend of the trenches. And yeah, we're going to have a good little cybersecurity conversation. Ali, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in cybersecurity and crypto?
Hey, yeah, thanks, Alpha. Thanks, Will. Yeah, great to meet the Beluga community. I'm super excited about this conversation. So, as Alpha mentioned, my name's Ali. I kind of spent the last 20 years in cybersecurity, started my career in traditional finance and investment banking and corporate finance. And then, when the 2007 market crashed, I heard about this innovation shortly thereafter called Bitcoin. A couple of my friends were traders at Merrill Lynch, which was like a company back then, which was acquired by like Bank of America, and they were traders. And they said, this thing is gonna really revolutionize. We're never gonna have like a mortgage crash or an economic crash ever like this again. And initially I was a little skeptic and hesitant, so I kept track of crypto and Bitcoin over the years since then, and I've seen its kind of evolution from fintech to kind of now the Genius Act, right, to wide scale adoption. So most of my career I just spent in like cyber threat intelligence, reverse engineering malware, looking at crypto miners, living on servers, building backdoors, right, into enterprises. And the last 2 years I've really gotten excited about crypto, and I think securing the chain is going to be the most important thing for the next decade. And so I'm super excited about that transition, and what I'm doing now in the space, is going to be really fundamental to really wide scale adoption of chain for the regular human globally. So I think it's going to be a really great game changer even further.
That's amazing. So what do you think is the easiest action someone can take just to make their crypto more secure?
Yeah, start at the 101, right? The basic. Yeah, I think, like most people who use crypto are typically, hopefully today, are a little bit more skeptic to like, random text messages from Nigerian princes, right? And are a little more skeptic. So I assume most users are getting phishing scams in their email, are getting text messages from like foreign countries, right? Are getting really malicious looking emails constantly, right? So I think really understanding true trusted connections and authentications and identities is probably the first step to having a zero trust mindset, right? So I think like if you have a hot wallet, obviously spin up a virtual machine, open up an incognito session, always log out of that session, completely isolate yourself as much as you can from lateral movement and other applications is always a smart thing, especially when swapping like a large amount of money. If you're authenticating somewhere publicly, make sure you run a VPN, right, and disguise your IP, because as you know, internet traffic and privacy is not really we're not really living in a private world, right? any information digitally leaves a digital footprint. So being really cautious and having what I call a zero trust mindset is always key, meaning like not trusting anything or anyone or any email, or even Zoom calls these days, right? Where with deep fakes. So hackers are really smart, right? Like they're working in groups and they're really well funded too now, right? As the growth of Bitcoin, right, adopts, right, that kind of increases their budgets too. So you have to think of it like you're one person against maybe like an army of people sitting in Southeast Asia somewhere, right, in a facility, like constantly persistently trying to target your wallet. So I think if you're on the internet, if you're in your home environment, like making sure you understand how to secure your router and understanding the basics of securing your router by resetting the default admin access passwords to something more secure and elevated, right? And then making sure you have two-factor authentication on every single layer of transaction that you do, including your own login to your laptop. I think passphrases are really the first step to additional authentication, right? And you have seed phrase storages as well, right, on cold wallets. So making sure you always go above and beyond and storing your cold wallets and really making sure you have a cold wallet too and not keeping everything in a hot wallet. There's a lot of good YouTube videos, right, of basics, do's and don'ts that you can watch. In this 1 hour session, we probably won't cover all that, but I think it always starts with like the basic cyber hygiene, trusting nothing, trusting no email, no text message, and no browser session, right? And making sure you're in and you're out and you're no longer authenticated anywhere, right? And double checking that. That's kind of the basic. The second is really testing that too, right? Testing if like someone else has access to anything that's a privileged password of yours, and not keeping things on like pieces of paper, right? Using Keystone or a little more elevated, hardware tokens that allow you to really um, take away the risk of having to memorize or store manual things, right? So I think as we get wider scale adoption, more innovation to help consumers will come into fruition as well. But purchasing like secondary things, on like Craigslist or marketplaces that have been used probably for hardware tokens is not going to be a smart thing, right? Making sure you go to like Amazon or a trusted site to buy anything that's associated to your cold wallets is really a good first step. And then making sure you check your transaction history frequently to make sure that you didn't get any like false attempted poisoning attacks of small transactions. And there's a lot of user error you can avoid. The sophisticated attacks like 0-day vulnerabilities on browsers are always going to be a scary thing, but making sure like you prevent like user error, configuration error, authentication error is really a good way to prevent 95% of attacks on your crypto wallets.
If I could just add on to that, I think in the last couple of days, some of the people joining this space have probably also seen, but there's been a slew of phishing hacks on big traders that essentially are just them getting the attacker getting the trader to share their private keys without realizing it on a Zoom call. So to your point, Ali, this is, tens of millions of dollars we're talking about close to every week, stemming entirely from user errors. So I totally agree. I think that's being careful, as much of a kind of, I guess, cliche as it is, thinking through every step you take, not FOMOing into, mint the tweet that just went up, because you never know if they're hacked or not. All of these kind of cognitive steps are super important. I mean, I've been trading in crypto for a little over 6 years now. And purely through kind of, being careful and taking some of the steps you talked about, including hardware wallets, I've never had a wallet drain. I think a lot of that is just thinking through logically what's happening. Yeah, I thought that was a great point.
Unfortunately for you, Will, Ali could change that. if you keep bragging
That's
on
why
the stream.
that's why we have him on, trying to make him my friend.
We're on the good side. Yeah, we're on the good side.
um, before we get into the next question, everyone should follow everyone on the show. Make sure to share the space, retweet it, like it, comment. It really helps. And this is applicable to anyone in crypto. So if you want to like make sure that your friends can stay in the trenches, make sure that their crypto is safe. So take a moment to share the space, send it to one of your friends that you feel like might not have the best crypto cybersecurity, and it helps the space and helps ensure that we can get great guests like Ali. But so kind of talking more about phishing attacks, how can normal crypto power users spot a phishing attack?
Yeah, so phishing attacks have gotten a little more intensive and aggressive and more sourced by advanced persistent threats, right? Because we've had a large proliferation of identities. For example, right, there's about like 8 billion people on the planet, but if you think about identity, we have individuals, we have like a MAC address on our laptop, our computer, then we have like 5 different emails, then we have we might have 2 phones and a family line. So, and then we have IoT devices, and then so there's all these attack surfaces that are in the single source, right? Your crypto wallet or you as an individual, right? That's targeted. So the point of entry is unfortunately like significantly larger, right? So if you go to like, have I been pawned and put in your email address, I guarantee you, like, if you put in all your Gmail addresses, all of them have been pawned over a period of time, right? So I think what you want to do to prevent smarter phishing attacks and stay ahead of it, because obviously there's like HTTPS anywhere, right? You could install like plugins to prevent authentication to sites so your data is not shared. If you notice, like, browser cookie caching has been around for a while. Each time you accept all, those third parties go out and sell your data or have the right to sell the data. So the proliferation of the internet in just like the last 25 years and the amount of identity proliferation that each individual has is just unsustainable, even for me or right, you Alpha, or even Will, right? So there's no way you're going to be able to track all the sites and all the emails and all the third-party services, right, that you have signed up for intentionally or unintentionally. So what's a good practice you could do is that create a new email account using an incognito browser, create a brand new email account, and don't share that email with anyone, right? Like, use that. So you do the first step, which is like, none of these third-party services that have been compromised, now the hackers can go and actually like track down, like, okay, Will has this email, or Alpha or Ali has this email address. This has been they're probably using this to log into Coinbase, right? So now you just removed like 90% of email phishing attacks as a result of that. Now, smishing attacks like SMS, right? Same thing. You might have to just increase one more phone line, right? And use like your secondary phone line and not your primary for your cold wallet and your hot wallet storage, right? For maybe exchanges, you could use your primary, but each time you do a swap or swap in or off ramp transaction, go into a secondary phone line. It's worth the extra $20. You can even use services like Ifani, which are bulletproof from swim swapping attacks, right? So as you understand like the complexity of our phone identity and email identity being like the largest 2 points of entry to enter your wallets, right, and your assets, your chain assets, you can really start to rethink what you want to do with this, right? If you have more than like $20,000 worth of crypto, it's worth paying the extra $20 to T-Mobile or $1,200 to Ifani or like, or getting another free Gmail address, right? It's like hackers have 50,000 Gmail IDs. You can have one more, right? So it's maybe like just not being lazy and thinking a little bit outside the box and creating these additional secure identities, only logging into like secure browsers, right? Like, being in an incognito mode, logging if you're on a public Wi-Fi, like, and you're not in your house and your house router is not configured securely, then maybe, using a VPN, logging into a virtual machine, using this new phone line, right? preventing swim swaps attacks, using a privileged identity like a secondary email will probably reduce like 99% of your phishing attacks. Then that 1% will be that advanced persistent threat because you might have a, a 7-figure wallet. That is unfortunately today in 2025 is like impossible to avoid, unless you're completely like off grid in the Caymans, like completely non-existent, right? And so that's probably like a different set of users, right? Which have a different bulletproof hosting security logic in mind. I think most consumers want that convenient access. So unfortunately, like the Genius Act is just relatively new. Stable coins are relatively new, right? So there's no way we're going to get wide scale security around the chain in the next 2-3 years, right? So in the meantime, if you want to get into the crypto bandwagon and the bull ride and still be secure from a lot of these easy attacks, as I would say, make that investment additionally into like a new email ID, a new phone line. Don't tell anyone it exists and start transaction crypto there, right? I mean, that's a great way to enter the market clean as a whistle. If you're going to enter within your existing ID, which is 99.99% confident it's already been compromised to some degree, you're entering the market with like a higher degree of risk, right? So I think that's where, yeah.
That makes sense. So for a lot of users, they might have already messed up, right? Like they've connected their email to an exchange. They're using a phone number. Say they want to take your advice and they want to go get a new email and they want to get a new phone line. How would that process differ for someone who's already involved in crypto but may have made some mistakes along the way? Like, how would you go about correcting those mistakes as efficiently as possible?
It's a great question. I think, what you want to do is run a footprint analysis on your actual digital footprint. And the way you could do that is just, run a PCAP, packet capture, on all the network traffic you're authenticating to each time you log into your browser. And then you realize like, oh my God, there's all these third parties that, Chrome is, in addition to what I'm logged into now, sharing information to. And then so what happens is that you're not going to be able to protect yourself for most of this, even if you have like an endpoint security installed, like a CrowdStrike running or a Bitdefender running on your endpoint. So the way you do that is really simple. Like you start re-authenticating all these devices back out, reissue a new password that is auto-generated, add a new passphrase, change the existing password, add a seed phrase on top of advanced authentication. Make sure that, like your seed phrase is not something that you've written down somewhere manually in a TXT file on your local device. And so because there might be existing malware running on your computer right now as we speak. For you to like understand that dropper that it lives on your computer, you would have to like run a different endpoint agent to extract what that traffic is, right? So I think what you're going to end up doing is spending a lot of time and money in trying to find that anomaly in the matrix. So you're better off almost doing a machine reset on your if you're using your Mac to do trading, right? Or a full reset on your phone if you're just doing it via mobile. So that way you can re-download the apps, right? Make sure you offline download your 2-factor authentication apps first before you do a hard factory reset on your phone. And you could still start from scratch, right? Because the iCloud, the private key, right, re-encrypts back when you authenticate to a new device or you do a factory reset. So the good thing is you could download those apps again. So I think at least you should do a hard reset at the hardware level. So all the apps that you've been communicating to without knowingly or unknowingly would be completely disabled, and then go back with the new password phrase, with the new password reset, hopefully with a new phone change as well, right? And then re-authenticate back to your hot wallets in a private session, right? So now you've de-risked yourself and migrated to like a secure private infrastructure at home without spending all that time assuming that, oh my God, I've started years ago, I can't go back into this. So that's kind of like a simple migration, right? You could do.
Do you think it's worth it for people who spend a lot of time in crypto to just get a completely separate computer or like a separate phone as well, just for their trading, to totally compartmentalize it?
Yeah, it's really necessary. Like alpha, I'll be honest with you, it's there's no way around it today. I mean, the boom in crypto is so fast, the innovation is so fast, but the security ratio to the innovation ratio is like 100 to 1, meaning every $100 spent on innovation in crypto, and the amount of meme coins, the amount of innovation, the startups that come out on the chain, and the new companies that are coming out, you don't want to, right? The hype is so exciting, you don't want to lose out on the whole idea of being part of this really awesome community. So, but like the investment in security is like very disproportionate. It's like $1 to every $100. So unfortunately, we're going to have this like disparity for like a decade. I think with the Genius Act, like I think there's going to be more adoption, right, with stablecoins. But stablecoins, let's be honest, right? It's a parallel effort, right? It's not like the core effort and evolution of the blockchain. So I think that will have a lower risk because of the way it's being adopted and built. But like traditional chain transactions and off ramp and on ramp transactions have a really complex ecosystem and technology stack that's been built right already and is established. So I think to your question, I think the best way around that is understanding that ecosystem is complex, has low security, low trust already. Why not take that effort and make the effort to stay in the ecosystem, to like sleep at night at peace, right? Because I know crypto is trading 24/7, but like crypto security shouldn't be 24/7 concern, right? Because a lot of people want to get more than an hour worth of sleep and not get drained. So
Is it worth it to trade at all on a phone, or are the risks just much higher?
if you authenticate and log out, and when you're done each session, you're good. But the problem is like most of these crypto companies, right? Based on my research so far, and that's why I'm excited about like going into the space, because there's a lot of need for crypto security, right? Based on the gaps that I've seen, is that they might have really good security engineers, they might have a really good security team, but the way the software supply chain ecosystem works, the amount of vulnerabilities that exist in their stacks, they don't even know where they're going to be popped and how they're going to be compromised by uh, and a really advanced, persistent team of hackers. So you might be confident in trading or logging in or authenticating and leaving that session on, but the risk of staying on session after you're done trading is much higher, I think, versus assuming that you're constantly protected, right? Because there's no FDIC insurance in your hot wallets, right, today. So I think what you want to do is to always, like I said, that zero trust mindset. Be super paranoid about your time and money, because your time you trade is also valuable. Your time is valuable, so you don't want to take that risk of leaving it in. I mean, yes, Coinbase is great, right? I mean, it's right that they probably have the most badass security team in the world out in crypto, but that doesn't mean they don't have data breaches or they don't have the possibility of data breaches. You still have to be kind of vigilant for yourself, even though the ecosystem and some of the larger companies like Binance, right, Coinbase, like if you're using those, right, they're probably at the highest, tier of security engineering. So
The amount of fake Coinbase authentication texts I receive on a daily basis is mind-boggling.
yep, plus 63, plus 9. It's from all over the world. Yeah. So
For the record, I don't even use Coinbase anymore. So it's like, it's annoying.
exactly.
At this point, I'm like, you're not even gonna get me. I don't use the account, but like, just leave me alone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you're thinking from an end user. Imagine like the employees that work there and how aggressively they're targeted, right? Because they have like, if you're like, right, because if you're storing your coins that are like, you're essentially giving your private keys away to them. So they're even a larger target, right? So if you're getting 5 per day, they're probably getting 50,000, right? So it's really bad.
So on the subject of trading mobily, are Telegram wallets safe?
End-to-end encrypted communication, like it's ironic. Like, it's a great question, right? First of all, like crypto, right, and cryptographic standards, right? When, like, if you read like Bruce Schneier's paper on asymmetric encryption and like all these amazing cryptographers that have come and gone in our industry, you'll recognize that like once there's a handshake, right, like a public and private key like connect in communication, and any communication app like Telegram, WhatsApp, right, iMessage, or like some of the more secure ones like Silent Circle, or like Mattermost and Slack, right? Anything that has a bidirectional like communication has a persistent handshake, right? So the cost of doing a per message encryption is very high, right? Because each message then has to be like decrypted on your side before I read it. Like, that's why Signal kind of has a really good protocol around this, right? And it's still freeware for most of us. And so Telegram is like, the servers are hosted in Dubai. There's like RGB Intel officers that are spying on those servers, on the backups possibly. Like there's a lot of attack surface risks that can go wrong, probably as a result of you using that wallet. Is it safe? I think, yeah, it's relatively safe because it's a fairly large organization that's been around, that wants to build trust in their community and wants to grow. So they're going to keep on investing in security. So from that perspective, it's good. But maintain that level of like peer-to-peer communication persistently for a long period of time is very cost intensive. So eventually you're going to end up paying a lot of money to Telegram for them to like justify that spend, or the risk is going to increase, over time, I think, in Telegram, as it is used as a massive like, targeting scheme too, right? I'm sure you get invited to like 50 Telegram channels that you don't want to be part of all the time. So I think you have to kind of balance it. Like, if you're going to use it, like what proportionate amount of your trading, right, and convenience are you willing to risk, knowing that there's some possibility of a 0-day vulnerability, like each message is not encrypted, like each time it does decrypt, like where was your session ID when you authenticated back? Like, did someone try to like attempt to phish you on a non-Telegram communication channel and drop a dropper? Like, it really depends on how you're living digitally, is where Telegram could be like, just as safe as iMessage or for your Signal. If you're living on the edge, like, I don't know, like who's on this podcast, and you're traveling, like, and you're in like public internet spaces and you're authenticating back to like, public Wi-Fi networks, that traffic is, PCAP to some hacker at one point in time, and they know your authentication session ID to Telegram, and then they could somehow, do a mimikatz, by phishing you and like re-authenticating to your Telegram, and now your Telegram session is like hijacked, even if you had two-factor authentication on, because you were persistently targeted. So you have to like be cognizant of the amount of crypto you're holding, how you're living on a day-to-day basis, and what risk profile you carry to like, like fly with your pants down, or maybe like take a lot of those assets offline to a cold wallet and still be able to go around and have that convenience. I agree, it's a great feature, it's a great tool, and it's convenient, but it comes with a lot of risk too. And so I think each person has to be really like vigilant of how many times they've been annoyed on Telegram and how many times they felt like, oh, like I'm probably not safe in this space, right? So I think you have to be really cognizant of that. And me personally, like I try to like log out of Telegram each time I log back in, for a specific period of time. And I know I don't get those notifications and messages, but like I'm fine with that. Like, I have like a clear need for it. And if you really want to find me, you will find me on Signal or somewhere.
So what you're saying is that girl named Rose, whose account was made this week, who messaged me on Telegram with a voice message, doesn't actually love me?
No, I mean, it's
This
probably
is
like a Lithuanian guy. Like, it's fine.
so,
I don't know. Like, it's cool, but
so
I'm
on
sure.
that note of like software wallets, if someone only has access to software wallets for whatever reason, what can they do to keep their crypto safe?
Yeah, so software lives at like layer 4 and above, right? I mean, the best and the most bulletproof hosting and security lives at layer 3 and below, right? So, I mean, meaning if you have access to a cold wallet, it's completely offline, it's embedded with no supply chain attack. You've updated the firmware on an ongoing basis. No one knows about its existence, hopefully, right? You're probably in a really, really good spot security wise. Software wallets are, software supply chain is hard, right? I mean, like I've led security at a software supply chain security vendor every day, every single day in my tenure there. We reverse engineered maybe like 40,000 different malware files that were pretty sophisticated, targeting like cryptocurrency users, right? And that's like daily traffic. Now multiply that by the amount of time that was, replicated. They take the same file and then they rehash it with maybe a little more sophistication, and it bypasses, right, like these security controls, right? So crypto users are increasingly targeted, right? And software is an easier point of entry than hardware level, right? Attacks, right? It's just like compare the amount of attacks your cold wallets had versus your hot wallet had and software wallets had, and I bet you like it's 100-fold, 300-fold, right? So I think the convenience is important. So you definitely don't want to be discouraged to like be on the chain. So you want convenience, but you also want privacy, right? And you want less risk. So the way I would balance that is again, like, authenticate, authenticate out, test transactions, verify every single thing and every single transaction. Like, do not trust that, that software vendor will not or compromise, right? Anything with a custodian account is a high value target, meaning there's a lot of North Koreans that are sitting and watching, like how, and they're studying it inside out, like, all day, how they're going to get inside. So, not just that, like there's a lot more, but that's just, one example. So I think we don't want to be in a situation ever where we're thinking that somehow software wallets are going to become more hardened and more secure. It's not, because they're on legacy stuff, meaning like they're on traditional languages. They're not like built on Golang native, which is more secure, right? They're built on like maybe like JavaScript, like which has like the most vulnerabilities on 0-day attacks. So there's no way like our chain industry is going to shift all of a sudden their stack, right? So software components and supply chain is like one of the most easiest way to build a backdoor into any one of our computers, or even to like I mean, there was like this famous SolarWinds attack, right? If you've ever read about it, like it was a sleeper for months and months and months, gone undetected on 10,000 like different vendors. It was a backdoor and to all of your communications. So there's a lot of good software supply chain attacks now that are really sophisticated. So you could be compromised for weeks and months without knowing it, right? Because they're disguised with just like one single line of code. So I know it's like super paranoid thinking and whatnot, but always assume like everything is compromised. And how do you work backwards from like removing yourself out of the risk equation versus like assuming nothing is compromised, and you're somehow navigating this, like you're Alice in the Wonderland and you're navigating this like digital World Wide Web, like without private with privacy, and like it's not going to
So
happen.
on that note of privacy, if you wanted to own crypto completely anonymously? How would you go about it?
Well, I mean, you'd probably be a DoD employee. That's probably the only way, right? Because you have bulletproof hosting that's legal, right? I think, issuing yourself some really good hardware security modules, getting access to like a rack server at a data center, and buying up an entire rack that's dedicated, issuing an IP, like calling your internet service provider and giving yourself a dedicated IP, authenticating through that IP to that data center, like tunneling and, having an SSH tunnel, like authenticate to that rack, and then purchasing the crypto through that tunnel only onto that hardware that you own. And on top of that, building a hardware security module that's hopefully hosted inside, like, somewhere in DC, that completely like elevated security is probably the only way you're going to get there. Everything other transaction is going to be reverse engineered, right? Because we have really good, so early in my career, I built a protocol with the government. Like, I was involved with like MITRE, DoD, and like all these amazing people. And we built like an entire protocol to communicate on. When you're operating anywhere, even in the dark web, right, you're still on some protocol of communication, TCP/IP. When you're on mobile, you're on SSS7. All of these have essentially backdoors, right? That someone who built the protocol or has privileged access to it, or the operating systems that live on it, could eventually, like, at any point in time, like enter into, right? So yeah, I mean, I don't think I have to go further in explaining that, but I think you get the point, right? If we build the protocol, we transact on it, we communicate on it, we can essentially reverse engineer it down to the packet level, to the bitmap level, right? Just like any file, any communication. So we should be able to still understand what true anonymity is versus like where the attribution is. So it's really hard to achieve that level of privacy, right? Unless, I think the way to look at it is that, like low volume transactions will probably be disregarded as a high value threat. That's why, like, Venmo or something limits themselves, or PayPal limited themselves to like less than $500, right? Or $2,000. That's how you should look at it. If you're just making like low volume transaction, low size transaction, you'll probably just disappear and become irrelevant, right, to a target. But if it's like high volume transaction, high impact, probably are going to have to go through some KYC elevated, regulatory framework that you probably definitely don't want to know about, right?
So on that note of like privacy, is Monero still like the gold standard for privacy in crypto? Is it still the most private cryptocurrency?
Look, I would have said that like 3 months ago, but like with the 51% attack persistent in in how Cubic is like aggressively taking the AI native like proof of work concept, like that's a really impressive and really scary security researcher's dream use case that I'm like really like studying right now, and I'm pretty impressed with what's going on and really scared as well. So I think we're gonna have to rethink proof of work, being like the true be all of the chain, right? If 51% attacks that have been recently issued against Monero, right, and the hash rate going on the other side now is going to be a game changer. So I think we're going to have to really like sideline that for a few months and wait and see. I would say if that is the case, right, and if it holds true and it's just an attempt and not an actual compromise of the proof of work of what's going on with Monero right now, like I think then yes, to date until 3 months ago, that was the assumption. But as AI and neural networks get integrated into AI infrastructure that can read the chain better, and asymmetric encryption becomes post quantum proof compromisable, and like the chain looks more visible than we thought it was, then what is truly a privileged transaction anymore, right? That is truly secure, private, and not changeable. So I think that's why I'm super excited to like join the industry, right? And transition from traditional financial security into like crypto security, because I think for the next 20 years, that's probably going to be a big, right, change we're going to see on how the evolution of quantum AI, neural networks, and how LLM native transactions integrate, right? Because we're seeing a merge, like it's almost like two super large, fast moving, like, meteoroids crashing. So we're going to have to see and wait and how, like, which one morphs into the other and like, and which one like survives and like kind of tries. So I feel like, we're seeing like the evolution of like a major collision right now in how the chain was architected and how AI and neural networks can really tamper, possibly, right? Software tampering to now AI chain native tampering with these attacks can happen. So yeah, it's really interesting times. Exciting to be in security, but a lot of work and research that's going to have to go into this to prove the chain like survives the AI native neural network angle that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. So
Yeah, the other interesting thing I heard about that Quebec attack is that they actually never got 51%. But so it was just as much of a psychological attack as it was a like an attempt to 51%, because they actually only ever got 33% of the hash rate, but they simultaneously were isolating blocks to make it seem like they had 51%. And then a bunch of miners just started folding because they were afraid of losing money. So it shows, it's interesting because Bitcoin was originally created to solve the Byzantine generals problem, where they're basically trying to figure out like how you create a voting system while there's bad actors in the mix. And prior to Bitcoin, the assumption was that you could only ever have 1/3 of the generals be like corrupt. So they assumed that like the max threshold for the Byzantine generals problem was 1/3. And Bitcoin proved that you could act as long as you had over 50%. The actual threshold was like, 49.99%. And Bitcoin also has the fail safe of if they were to get 51%, then the and it was truly a hostile takeover, then the value would collapse and the point of taking over Bitcoin would go away. So
yeah,
that was like the failsafe. But this shows that with some psychological trickery and a really good PR campaign, 1/3 is still a really dangerous spot for like a Byzantine sort of attack.
that's a great point. Like the scariest thing about all this is that knowing that data poisoning attacks, when I was in quant trading like 20 years ago on Wall Street, data poisoning attacks were still a thing. They're still a thing right now. So you're right, creating chaos and fear, like like creating that illusion of the possibility today, generates speed at which people are trading at. You're right, and creates that chaos as much as that. That's why I feel like the dust needs to settle and like all the validation occurs, and hopefully, like we have a really solid system in place, right, where this is just not acceptable, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, but crazy times, right? And so yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're coming towards the end of our show, but if you had to sum up how to keep your crypto safe in one sentence, what would it be?
Don't trust anything, anyone, any browser session, any Wi-Fi router, any hotspot. Just like zero trust yourself into trust. Like build trust. Like start with zero trust and then build trust at each layer and each step, and like think about what you're doing before you do it, because like even if you're trading, like like that's an exception because you're already trading, like, but like there are so many now points of entry of the attack surface is so much larger. So like, to say it in one sentence: trust nothing and verify everything.
That's great. So what are you working on right now? We want to hear about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm super excited like about the WLFI coin and kind of the overall adoption of the Genius Act. A lot of my research and contribution to the security community and the financial sector, I think, is going to finally like proliferate into something valuable because, I've been kind of observing like the chain and, the blockchain and smart contracts and really like different fraud identity research use cases for years now, but like synthetic identity and all this awesome like stuff that I've like published and researched over the years in protocols and security research, like now I feel like are all going to be applicable, right, with the adoption of stablecoin. So I'm super excited about now building like a security organization and that provides like intelligence to custodian accounts and different researchers in on the chain to provide like security and visibility intelligence for the chain, right? And companies that are living and transacting on the chain. So I'm super excited about that. Like been working on it on stealth for a while and it's going to be coming out soon and then I'll be working with the chain providers much more actively and on the ground. So like super excited about what you guys are doing and I think it's going to be really awesome.
Yeah, this was amazing. We'd love to have you on again. We want to hear more from you because we could go on for hours. As you know, trying to keep your crypto safe is a big job, and there's a lot of questions that we still have. But how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, I got my handle here on Twitter, so you just DM me or like, drop me a note on like LinkedIn or, just you're not gonna get my phone number. So you're probably gonna have to just
Which
DM
one?
which one exactly. But if you find it somewhere in the World Wide Web, sure, drop me a text. You probably won't get a response. But like, I would say, like, yeah, just on my X, X DM or LinkedIn DM would be fine, and and happy to like share with the Beluga team, my email that like is publicly available that if anyone wants to like email me, but like it's cool. Would love to like engage with the Beluga community and
It's
see
like a
how I can.
digital scavenger hunt to get this guy's phone number, and the reward at the end is you just get blocked. And no, I think it would be a cool cybersecurity uh like problem that we could like publicly cover would be like creating a crypto wallet with like a certain amount of money in it and just seeing if people could get to it. Like just putting little hints and seeing if people could hack into it just for the sake of it.
Well, I mean, it's a good effort. I mean, it's called a honeypot. I've done that before. It's a great way to attract the right hackers and honeypot them. So I'm happy to spin one up honeypot for Beluga's team.
The Beluga honeypot. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ali. This was great. Make sure to follow everyone on the show, um, and make sure to follow Beluga because we will be doing more of these spaces. Subscribe to our newsletter, and yeah, I hope everyone is able to keep their crypto safe.
I just wanted to thank Ali for coming on. I'm glad that we got this together, and definitely love to have you on again in the future. So yeah, thanks for hopping on. Super interesting discussion.